Stranger Things Volume 1, Season 5 review. So, Season 5 we picked up in the first episode where it gets to the night in the early 1980s, 1983, November the 3rd, and I believe this is the time before Will, was going back to his the Byers castle, like the Byers little castle in the backyard, pretty much. And we saw where where Vecna, or aka Henry, was pretty much stalking him and traumatizing him and pretty much traumatizing him and overall like possessing him to a point where it could it pretty much was taking possessing it with the mind, with the hive mind. And so he uses that, and so the hive mind was as he was being possessed, and he ends up taking his own and having from the control of Vecna. And you saw that throughout the entire show, like how he pretty much is the key and the answer throughout all the show. Then after that, we end up getting to the radio station that was pretty much run by Jonathan and Nancy, but the main DJs were of course Steve and Robin, which I kind of figured that was gonna be the main figure in the main case, due to the standpoint of Robin. She has a really solid personality. And of course, Steve, he's always trying to find his way to either impress either Robin or both Nancy. He tries to do that. But at the same time, he wants to try to find his own character, try to find his own identity in a sense, in that sense. And then we also pick up a lot of things where Dustin and Mike and Lucas, and of course Will, like the D&D days, then trying to bring back some things about the Hellfire Club in this first episode. And this is pretty much the episode called The Crawl. And so they all planned up: Jonathan, Nancy, Steve, and Robin, and then of course Mike, Lucas, Will, and Dustin, and then Hopper, Joyce, and Elle. Elle's doing her training. And pretty much we saw how they all had an idea and a plan in order to do some sort of like reconning, because to prepare themselves, and Elle's doing her training to prepare herself for any case of an ongoing threat moving forward. Like, she's trying to set her own pace. And I really like that about this episode, because again, you don't know what kind of like, monsters and demons and etc. like creatures that ends up going out, depending on how that outcome will be the case. Because you got to be prepared at all costs of what's going on around you, the happenings and surrounding and the environments around you. You got to be prepared. You don't want to end up slipping up on yourself or messing up. And so I really like the fact that they show that's complete badassery. And if in the 80s, they always had some kind of training. They always had some kind of training regimen. And they always had some sort of like, competing with themselves and trying to compete and trying to train themselves to be at the forefront at their own high level, at the highest level. So that was the main thing I saw from that. And also, in the midst of training, the keen of the relationship between Joyce and Hopper in the show was really keen. And that pretty much just turned was pretty much already been a turn on since season 3. Joyce and Hopper really was kind of feeling each other, so that kind of was a thing that was a parallel, and it was paramount. And then also we end up seeing that the Wheeler family, Mike and Nancy, they have a sister named Holly Wheeler, and she's ended up going into Hawkins High. And I pretty much figured out that pretty much throughout. And they show, and and you notice how a lot of the seasons of the Stranger Things in the first couple episodes, they always foreshadow and show the main characters, but the main characters' family members, like something could possibly happen, like some evil like monster and everything. And they show and they foreshadow and conclude and allude to Holly, as she ends up imagining like this monster, Mr. What's to it, Mr. What's it to you, pretty much that she imagines him like in the picture drawings that she drew and also in the visions and the illusions that she ends up having. That kind of pretty much put it into perspective on how that was gonna tantamount her. And then later on in the episode, we pick up on the reconning where the radio tech that Jonathan and Steve and eventually Dustin in the next episode later on, because he ends up getting beat by these jocks. They end up trying to navigate and locate Hopper as he's going into the Upside Down by himself, without no kind of would just go and tries to go into this military sub base, which he ends up going to this military base, trying to recon and see what's up in this base, because it has it has a it has a way of knowing about all these ongoing monsters and ongoing like creatures, but we end up finding more later that these are more inside of the Upside Down, more Demogorgons. I think it was one. I think it was another. It was a Mind Flayer also in this first episode as well. But Hopper ends up finding out more about this, and then the Demogorgon ends up creeping out into the Wheelers, from the Upside Down into this from the ceiling into the Wheeler house, and ends up taking away Holly, as the kidnapping of Holly into another alternate dimension in the Upside Down, and that's pretty much the end of the episode. In episode 2, this is the vanishing of Holly Wheeler, as the police end up the Hawkins police and Hawkins, Indiana investigators end up finding and searching and trying to discover these military bases. They end up finding and searching, discovering about what could possibly happen to Holly. Nancy and Mike end up getting to their house late. Their mother and their father pretty much end up getting taken out by this Demogorgon, and they end up in the hospital, open them in recovery. And once they're in recovery, Mike and Nancy try to ask their mother about what happened to Holly and everything. What could have been the deciding factor? Why take her at the end of the day? And then in that case, she drew she ended up writing out a scenario and a situation that could have indicated what could have happened to Holly and where she could have taken him, and why Vecna, at the time could have been a factor. But we end up knowing, and I end up seeing later on, when Will has these visions about Holly, ends up having the visions about another kid that thought about getting taken, named Derry, but he ends up not getting taken. But he ends up not getting taken by Vecna, because Will, Mike, Lucas, and of course Nancy, Jonathan, and everybody else prepared throughout to try to trap one of the Demogorgons inside of the kid Derry in his home. And so once they end up trapping him out, but they take Derry and of course his family into this this farmhouse, to try to keep them safe in order for this Demogorgon to not attack them, while in the same midst trying to locate where Holly is. And then from then on forward, we end up seeing that Elle ends up going inside of the wall, which is pretty much towards the Upside Down, and she ends up running into Hopper, and then Elle and Hopper end up going on this quest to try to locate where Holly could possibly be at, along with other kids, and also where this military base is at. And so that's pretty much Derek Turnbull. Thank you, J Pop. Thank you for that. But yeah, Derek Turnbull, and then of course the Turnbull trap, which is the episode 3, is where Joyce and Mike and Will and Lucas end up using Derek Turnbull to end up having to locate where the rest of the kids are, because the kids were taken by this group of military and sergeants to try to keep them in their mind protected and safe. And it was orders by Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton. And I really feel like in that part of the episode, we also see more of the Demogorgons, and these monsters end up coming out. and they start wrecking havoc, tearing up everything left and right. They took out and wipe out a bunch uh, 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 of soldiers, a bunch of soldiers in the military and everything. They take out a whole slew of people. Uh, then also I end up, and then also in this episode, Max comes into the fold, and how Max ends up coming to the fold is, um, it's another, like I said about before, about another alternate universe of the dimension that was made from Henry or Vecna as a way of luring and trapping both Holly and Max inside of this little alternate world, where she thought she'd end up having an opening and waking up out of, what we saw in the last season of a coma, of an induced coma, which Vecna had pretty much caused and wreak havoc and cause chaos and mayhem towards everyone. But mainly Max was there, and so she ends up talking to Holly in this episode, wanting to figure out and so in this and then also so and so once Max and Holly started talking, she ends up telling Holly, you got to go back to this house that Henry was keeping you captive in, and be there, and don't ever make him have any indication that you were gone, that you were end up seeing me. There's a way of there was like 3 doors she was telling that she got trapped in, and so she ends up picking. Eventually, she thought she was gonna pick door number 3, but she ends up picking door 2, and then ends up getting caught under one of Vecna's spots and everything. So I thought that was pretty interesting, that of an angle that they both that Max took, and then she ends up trying to give advice to Holly about where they're gonna take at the end of the day. So I thought that was pretty cool. Her popping up in episode 3, which leads into 4, is what I mean. That was really interesting, and that was really cool seeing that part. And then once we get there, we transition into the 4th episode, and Elle and Hopper doing more reconning. They end up taking taking down one of the soldiers. Try to interrogate him, asking some questions about what they know about this wall. That's in the Upside Down, about this lair, and then of course this military base, Dr. K. And where all their hideouts could be at, and why they're taking kids away and everything. So yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much from there. And then Jonathan, Steve, Nancy, and Dustin end up going inside of the wall, but they're on the other side, like on the west angle, because they end up trying to, radioactively try to locate where Hopper and Elle are, and they couldn't end up finding them, and then their car end up getting into a wreck. So that would be the main thing that happens to them. Hopper tells them to stand down and kind of just lay back and be cool, because they'll find a way to get out of this situation. So and then Mike and Lucas and Joyce end up going through the tunnels, trying to get back the kids and take them down, and end up trying to get them back into safety, back into Hawkins, Indiana. And then, of course, that doesn't go to plan, because once the soldiers end up finding out, and Dr. K end up finding out what was going on, that would pretty much be concealed of their plans end up going unfold. And so once we get to that point, we subvertedly go back to Elle and Hopper, as they end up finding a way inside of this base, they end up meeting Dr. K, and then one of the soldiers that they end up trying to take down tries to kill him. That doesn't work. Tries to unalive him. That doesn't work. Um, Hopper tries to protect El the way he could and the way he can by going inside of another vault door to try to see if Vecna was still inside. That the military pretty much kept, if they kept him there, which that wasn't the case at all. And so in this sense, we end up seeing that there was more to it, that this military people was keeping, not just kids, in their more or less in these more or less in their anyways, the military was more or less were keeping and experimenting on Elle and her adopted sister, and her adopted sister was mainly number 8. They kept her and experimented her in this vault door, and once I figured that out, I was like, oh wow. And my thoughts and my reactions towards it was like, well, a couple of questions. One, why would they bring back number 8 pretty much, as she calls, Elle, like Jane, because they were both adopted sisters. Why would they bring her back? That number one. And then number two, how long did they keep her, inside of that like vault door in that chamber? Like, what were they experimenting her on? What were they kind of doing to her? Like, that's what I had like a couple of questions on, because that left me kind of jarred and confused. That pretty much kept the wanting some questions, a couple of questions and answers. Then we end up getting back towards Hawkins, Indiana. We end up seeing Will, Lucas, Mike, and Joyce. They end up getting taken by Derek Turnbull. They end up getting taken by a group of the military and group of police force. And then once that was going to be the case, a bunch of Demogorgons come, and then later on, Vecna ends up coming in and taking and wiping out a whole slew of soldiers and cops and everyone left and right. Then Will ends up again. He goes inside and ends up trapping inside of Will's mind. Tells him why he does the things that he does, why he takes kids and why he kidnaps them and everything. I just thought that that was pretty interesting. But then we end up seeing Will, like I said before, because he was been the key throughout all the seasons, and him having these source of powers that he never really unveiled. And when we see him have his powers unveiled, I thought it was just like, yo, this is some fire level stuff, man, and wipes out a few Demogorgons, with just his mind, and pretty much with his whole hands, kind of like we saw Elle kind of took her powers and took control. He ends up taking control and using his powers to his ability to save his friends. And that was just the microcosm of what I think is going to be a big and important factor in these last 4 episodes of the season, where it could be a deciding factor where things could be going. So yeah, I thought all 4 episodes just flowed and smooth, transitioned very well. It gave me so many things that I really just wanted to know and explore what could be founded upon. And I thought the execution, I thought the overall action, the overall cinematography, the visuals was outstanding. I thought the cast was great. It was just amazing all across the board. It kept you just wondering, like, why did Vecna just choose specifically children and kids that he wanted to just take, and kidnap and like possess them and trap them inside his mind. And like, I wanted to know what was that, was it the deciding factor on, and then what was Will's like powers and how would that what would he be capable of? Like, is Max gonna be coming out of like that in in the dude's coma? I wanted to know more about like, why did he just take Holly? Why did he didn't kill, the parents of the Wheeler family? Like, why did he do the things that he does? It just felt like it was It was just something that I just thought it was just it kept me engaged and it kept me intrigued to know more and more what could be going on in these episodes. So that was the thing I was really enjoying upon. Uh, Let me see what y'all saying in the comment section. He said season one is the best season. Um, I kind of feel that season four was just slightly a bit better. Well, number one is because, like I said, a great villain in Vecna, and of course, every other character had their moment to shine, and it didn't feel like anybody was taking over the spotlight. And I felt like everything just felt natural and, organic, and it felt like it reminded me of so many things of just not just the '80s with the wardrobe and the costume, but it reminded me. But season four reminded me so much of what I love and why I got into Stranger Things in the first place. It reminded me so much of that, so I thought it was pretty cool. You said the humor was kind of trash this season, and the writing is convoluted. I don't think the writing is convoluted. I feel like it has a message. I feel like it has a overarching point of mainly knowing that your environment and your surroundings, you know, that's happening around you, and sometimes you keep people that you think is close to you, but the ones can always turn you and hurt you the most. And then also, family is the most powerful key, and you never know what your powers could be. You never know what your powers could be unless you find a way to, you know, spark it, unless you had some energy or noble energy or energy source to spark it. So I feel like it has some messages and themes to me, J Pop, that really kept it together. He said, "Do you think Will deserved his powers?" I never really, I didn't necessarily think he did or he didn't deserve his powers. I just never really found certain things in the show that really gave us any indication of him using it and using it in a proper way, because we never really got to that point. We just always knew that the he always knew about the mind flare, the picture drawings that he did, how he knew about the hive mind. We never really knew exactly what his powers could be capable of. So yeah. If there's a scene with Will kissing Mike, I will turn off the whole effing show. No, there's not gonna be a scene of that. So Max and Holly is trapped in Vecna's mind. Yeah, yes, that is correct. And you said, what is your favorite season of the show? Like I just said, season four. You said door two is a metaphorical door. Yeah. Yeah, it just means accepting your fate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Why would they bring back 00? Why would they bring back number 8? I don't know why. I thought that was I thought that was just kind of odd and ironic. And yeah, that was the part of the show in episode 7 of season 2 that really just turned me off. There was a couple of scenes in that episode, and also a couple episodes in season 2 that I really wasn't a huge fan of. And I felt like there were a bit of pieces where it was a little bit too nostalgic, and it kind of turned me off a little bit. But that episode in particular, it just felt like it was agenda driven. That episode just felt agenda driven. I wasn't feeling that. You said the acting was mid though. I don't know about the acting being mid. I just feel like we don't we don't really know. I feel like the acting was dope. I feel like the acting was great. But there's so many things there's so many ideas, central themes, and overarching messages that I think they're gonna explore more. I thought they explored and set upon in the fourth episode, because it was the longest one. I felt like they set up things and set up some overarching themes and messages with Vecna and Will. I felt like everything they set up is going to be ahead. And even the same thing with Jane, uh, seeing her sister in the show. I thought that was pretty interesting. You said the cinematography was crazy. Yeah, it was. It was dope. I really enjoyed everything about it. Um, and it was just also smooth transitions into not only scenes but smooth transitions to the episodes. It was just smooth. It felt very calm, and it felt very like straightforward and to a point. You said you thought Vecna was a PDF file at first. I didn't think that, but I can maybe understand why you feel that way, but I didn't think that at first. until the moments in this season where he was kidnapping children. Then I kind of had some. Then they had raised an eyebrow and raised some questions. I say season 4 is the second best, but they have the Jonathan's character by turning him into a pothead. Yeah, they really made Jonathan because he was always like brains over bronze, and he was always something like him he went from like a professional photographer, like a cameraman. He went from like a professional photographer and a cameraman to more like him supposedly caring about Nancy, but then him turning himself to more like a pothead. I didn't really think that was all that crazy. Then looking back, season 3 was insane when they had the Russian base under a mall while the Russian Terminator was trying to kill everyone. Yeah, yeah. Season 3 definitely had a lot of Russian communion, commie base, and a Russian Terminator. Like they really showed and really put a lot of balls to the wall action scenes with them in it. Especially that going back and forth with Hopper and L. I thought that was just a really back and forth exchange, really good action scenes between all of them. That was a good back and forth exchange. I really enjoyed that. And then of course the Russian Terminator trying to go after one of the kids. I thought that was pretty cool. He said season 1 Jonathan was peak. Yeah, yeah, he was. And a problem I had with this season is that Steve was going back to trying to compete with Jonathan up for Nancy. Look, yeah, that's the only thing I would say is a slight issue with me in this season. It's a slight issue, but I don't think it's going to continue to go on for a minute. I don't think it's going to continue to go on for too long. Um, because I think I believe Nancy. I think Jonathan's going to probably propose to Nancy later on, and also the deterioration of Steve's friendship with Dustin is this season. Yeah, that's a problem. That's a major problem. The deterioration with Steve and Dustin and their chemistry is completely gone down. I don't know what the hell is going on with that. Yeah, they're gonna have to work on that or something. That is just nonsense. I don't know what is going on with Steve and Dustin. That doesn't make any sense. Why they're kind of back and forth and bickering. And I have a feeling in the end that there will be a huge payoff with all of them rekindling their friendship. I mean, I hope Steve and Dustin rekindle their friendship because, man, that is just. I don't know what the hell is going on with that. I don't know what the Duffer Brothers is doing with the writing with that. I think they need to get them back together and like do something because that's not working for me. I don't like that. Um, but yeah, overall, um, I gotta give this show a solid. I gotta give this show a solid 5 out of 5 stars. A solid 10, man. I really enjoyed this season, volume 1 right now. I really like the way things are going. I like the way things are going with everybody with every one of these characters. Like I said, there are a bit of flaws as far as the friendship aspect goes with Steve and Dustin, and of course Jonathan and like Steve, and of course the relation between um, Jonathan and Nancy. I feel like that was going to be there. And then, of course, I didn't even mention about Robin and her newfound love with Vicky because, after she got done with the whole radio gig, she wants to try to, she wants to have rekindling, she wants to have a new relationship with her. But yeah, getting back to I really enjoyed this season. I give it a solid 5 stars. 10 out of 10, high recommendation. I definitely will recommend this to many fans who enjoy season season 1 through 4. Definitely go watch those and get yourself caught into doing those in order to get caught up all the way to volume 1 of season 5 and through the 4 episodes, and you'll definitely be caught up. It is definitely something that I would recommend all the way around. So please check this one out. All right, man. I will talk to you guys in the next one for volume 2, which that will be on New Year's. So I will be talking to you then about that. And also I will be doing Mayor of Kingstown recap of season 4, similar to this similar to a stream like this. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. All right, guys, I'm out. Peace.